The role knowledge answer that sounds great, but fails the hiring committee member. Most candidates sketch a perfectly reasonable GCP stack, name pub sub and BigQuery, and walk out thinking they nailed it, not knowing the hiring committee scored them as a junior engineer who only handles the happy path. The question is, design a system to ingest and process 1 billion events per day from a mobile app into a queryable data warehouse with freshness guarantees. This tests role knowledge. At Google, that means owning a pipeline end-to-end, not just naming services. What the interviewer is actually listening for is whether you think about idempotency, schema evolution, and backfill strategy, or whether you stop at the architecture diagram. Here is how most candidates answer this question about designing a billion-event ingestion pipeline.
I'd use pub/sub for ingestion since it handles high-throughput message streaming and decouples the mobile clients from the processing layer. From there, I'd run a data flow streaming pipeline to parse, validate, and transform events before landing them in BigQuery. For freshness, I'd target a 5-minute end-to-end latency using streaming inserts into BigQuery. I'd partition the BigQuery table by event date and cluster on event type to keep query costs down. For reliability, I'd set up cloud monitoring alerts on pipeline lag and dead letter topics for malformed events.
No mention of idempotency or exactly once delivery guarantees. Schema evolution completely absent. No strategy for additive or breaking changes. Backfill strategy missing. Assumes pipeline never falls behind or fails. Happy path only. No discussion of late arriving events or reprocessing. Here is what I am writing in the debrief right now. Item 1. Named correct GCP services but showed no depth beyond service selection. Item 2. Idempotency not addressed. Duplicate events at this scale are a certainty, not an edge case. Item 3. Schema evolution absent. No plan for additive changes or consumer impact management. Item 4. Backfill strategy missing. Candidate assumes pipeline only ever runs forward. Verdict. Does not demonstrate role knowledge. Same question, same 1 billion events. Listen to how this candidate opens before naming a single GCP service.
Before I pick services, let me clarify constraints: freshness, SLA, tolerable duplicate rate, and whether schema changes are expected. At 1 billion events per day, roughly 11,000 per second, I'd use pub/sub for ingestion with message deduplication IDs on the client side to enable idempotent writes. Dataflow would handle streaming processing with exactly once semantics using its native checkpointing. For schema evolution, I'd enforce backward-compatible changes through a pub/sub schema registry and version events with a schema ID, so Dataflow can route to the correct transformation logic without reprocessing failures. BigQuery receives partition streaming inserts. I'd measure freshness lag via a cloud monitoring SLO with a 5-minute P99 target. Critically, I'd build a Dataflow batch backfill job from day one, triggered off Cloud Composer, so that any pipeline outage can be replayed from pub/sub's 7-day retention without manual intervention. I've run this pattern at roughly 2 billion events per day and kept freshness under 4 minutes P95.
Led with requirements and constraints before proposing any service. Idempotency addressed explicitly at both client and processing layers. Schema evolution handled with versioning and registry. Downstream consumers protected. Backfill strategy built in by design, not as an afterthought. Notice what changed. The architecture was nearly identical, but the depth of reasoning was not. Item 1. Opened with requirements. Did not assume constraints before establishing them. Item 2. Idempotency addressed at client and processing layers with concrete mechanism. Item 3. Schema evolution handled via versioned events and registry shows cross-team awareness. Item 4. Backfill built into initial design. Cited real production metrics at comparable scale. Verdict: strong signal, strong hire. Before your loop, run your pipeline design through these 3 questions. Question 1. Does your design explicitly address what happens when the pipeline falls behind? If not, the hiring committee member reads it as happy path thinking at L4, not L5. Question 2. Have you explained how duplicate events are prevented at the ingestion and processing layers? Missing idempotency at this scale signals you have not operated a pipeline in production. Question 3. Does your answer show how downstream consumers survive a schema change? No schema evolution strategy means you are designing for yourself, not for the platform. If you cannot answer yes to all 3, you are not demonstrating role knowledge. You are demonstrating that you can name services. How do your real stories score? Get a personalized report scored against the interview rubric Google uses for your role. Head to interview101.com and find out where you stand before the hiring committee does.